Hi, I'm Dr. Becky. I'm a registered psychologist, and today I'm going to talk to you about limerence. So, limerence is love addiction. It is the exact same thing. Often people, when they talk about limerence, they talk about obsessive love or this kind of obsessive fantasy, but I really like to clarify for people that limerence and love addiction are identical. And the reason I like to say that is because if people see limerence as love addiction, they realize it is an addiction and then they treat it accordingly, so then they can actually get back from it. When people don't realize that it's an addiction and that it's love addiction, they often get caught up in this fantasy of, wait, is it real love or is it limerence? Could there be something here? Is it reciprocal or is it limerence? And it can be really confusing for people. So in this video, I'm going to talk through 13 signs that actually what you're experiencing is limerence and not true love or not lust that could actually develop into a really healthy relationship. So hopefully you find this video useful. So limerence is a pretty dark topic, and actually when I really think about it and when I think of the people who are affected by it, I see tremendous amounts of pain. It comes from childhood trauma. Almost anyone who has complex PTSD will experience some kind of limerence in some shape or form in their relationship lives. Other people who have experienced a lot of childhood trauma that may not necessarily be diagnosed as complex PTSD will often still experience limerence as well. So these are the prime candidates. These are the people who are extremely susceptible to experiencing limerence, and it is really not fun. When you look at the reality of the situation and you look at actually what happens to someone when they become limerent, they lose touch with the present moment. They are in maladaptive daydreaming mode. So very common actually for people who experience ADHD, because people who experience ADHD are maladaptive daydreamers. So this is a way of coping in childhood with very difficult emotions, stressful situations, just to be able to cope with being emotionally abandoned in childhood. People learn to maladaptively daydream, so they learn to go into fantasy. And then often people who develop limerence or love addiction use that exact ability and that exact habit and that exact coping strategy that they used in childhood to get through very difficult, stressful, or neglectful, lonely situations. They go on into adulthood and they end up fantasizing. And the reason they fantasize about this idealized partner is that they were emotionally neglected in childhood. They were longing for the parent who was not able to attend to their needs and was not able to be there for them. So therefore they carry on into adulthood thinking that it's actually normal to long for love, and they get very excited by that, but actually it's escapism. Often people are extremely triggered by limerence in times of stress, so actually they're not very good at self-regulating in those particular moments. So their attempt to self-regulate is actually them going into their mind, going into fantasy, and they get that dopamine reward for that, and it's their way of trying to self-soothe in times of distress, particularly times when they're feeling a lot of shame and they're not feeling good within themselves. People can be particularly sensitive to limerence, but also people can experience limerence throughout their life. For some people, it will be more prominent at certain periods than others. When they're struggling, for other people, it's consistent. They're like consistently limerent. But whenever people are experiencing limerence the most, that is when they're least present in their lives and least productive and enjoying life the least. Even though they will have these moments of pleasure when they go into this fantasy, and that can feel rewarding, that actually behind that is going to be a lot of loneliness, perhaps depression, and not attending to the present moment and not actually getting very much done. So it's a pretty painful addiction and condition for people, and I really empathize with people who have this. So that's why I want people to try and identify the signs, because when people can identify that it's limerence and not love, they can then apply the strategies that they need to apply to be able to bring themselves back and try to tackle this. And really actually knowing and being able to label what you're experiencing as limerence or love addiction can be tremendously helpful to starting to heal. Sign number one that you're in a limerence situation is intensity. This is going to feel really intense, and you're going to interpret those feelings as love, because in your childhood you had to chase love, you had to long for love. So the only thing that you can recognize as love is something that feels super intense. You won't recognize small, slow, stable startings to relationships as love. So the feelings are going to be intense. There's going to be a lot of longing, and there's going to be a lot of hope for reciprocation from the other person. So the other person will not have reciprocated yet completely. They will not have decided that they're going to give you a consistent, healthy relationship. And they might have fueled part of the intensity in the beginning. Perhaps they heavily pursued you, perhaps not. Regardless, there's going to be intensity when it comes to limerence. With limerence, there's a preoccupation. So people often spend a lot more time in their head thinking about the person rather than actually just being in the present moment, enjoying time with them. They can often also feel very nervous around the person because they put them on such a pedestal that actually they're very afraid of how the person perceives them, which of course is not real love, which is going to be far less intense and more consistent over time, and more about the connection that you build over time after spending quality time with someone. And you definitely do not have commitment from this person with limerence. Sign number 2 that this is limerence and not love is fluctuation. So limerence fluctuates because when the person reciprocates properly and they enter into a healthy relationship with you, you will no longer feel limerence and you will no longer be fantasizing and longing for them in the same way. So actually you will lose interest in them when they reciprocate. Another sign is idolization. You put the object of your affection on a pedestal. They can do no wrong. They are perfect. As I've said earlier, you would give it all up for them. In fact, you would even ruin your life for them. And when you think about the partner that you're willing to do this for, you will almost always, with some exceptions, but almost always, the object of your obsession has attachment related issues as well. And the reason why that tends to be is that because you have attachment related difficulties, if you have limerence, you are drawn to individuals who also mirror that, who also have attachment related difficulties. You are not drawn to available partners. So the chances are the object of your obsession is actually going to be someone who is quite flawed. So this is also why when people tend to end up in relationships with the object of their obsession, the person they have limerence for, when that person does reciprocate and you end up in a relationship with them, you end up in a relationship almost always with someone who has difficulties. They either have addictions, they have attachment related difficulties, they don't respect you, they are not consistent enough. So you end up actually in a very unhealthy relationship with the person that you have originally obsessed over. Of course, sometimes people can really work on themselves, can change, try their very best in the relationship. So I am not saying that every single person you have ever been attracted to is completely flawed. I mean, the thing is, all humans are flawed anyway. So the problem with idolization is that when reality hits and you realize, oh, actually, the person that you had obsessed over is human, then you realize actually they're not who you thought they were. So there's always idolization, and there is often problems with substances, addictions, attachment related difficulties in the person who you will choose to obsess over, because they are unavailable. You're not choosing someone who is available to you. The people who are available to you, you will normally discount, and they will be the more healthy partners. They will be the people who are more likely to treat you better. So watch out for idolization. Watch out for you putting anyone on a pedestal. And that does mean that actually when you're not putting someone on a pedestal, you might perceive them as too boring to give a chance to. And that's something that you'll actually need to work on. You'll need to work on identifying, when are you not idolizing someone, and when are you perhaps perceiving them as a bit too boring or just not interesting enough to give them a chance? And are you discounting actually people who are showing up for you, people who are available, who are showing signs that they could give you something consistent? So you do need to try and identify these people that you don't idolize over, and if they're showing interest in you, it's perhaps a good idea to give them a chance. Sign number 4 is there is emotional dependency or some kind of codependency in this dynamic with you and the other person. So it might be that they have some kind of addiction. It might be that you need an excessive amount of reassurance for them and you feel deeply insecure in your situationship or your dynamic with them, and you become overly dependent on them validating you. So your emotions very much depend on their reaction towards you. So you kind of lose your independence. Whereas true love is actually about you being able to hold on to your independence while also being able to depend on someone. So there isn't a codependent dynamic when it comes to true love. Sign number 5 is the one-sidedness of the relationship. So either this relationship is completely one-sided and the person is not interested in you, or they're giving you mixed messages, or they actually have very complex feelings about you and they do have care for you, but they don't want to be in a consistent relationship with you, or they're not showing you the respect and the consistency that you deserve. So there's something one-sided about it. It doesn't need to be 100% one-sided, although in some cases limerence can be quite delusional. Whereas actually what's most often the case is that there has been a lot of interaction, not very consistently. It can be quite sporadic because actually we don't tend to find limerence in highly consistent, dependable relationships, but actually often with people who feel limerence towards someone, they're not able to grasp that person properly. They're not able to catch hold of them. There is longing, there's hoping. So that's why it will often happen in situationships where actually they perhaps date the person or meet up with them or sleep with them, and they're just not quite getting the commitment that they need, or they're getting mixed messages, so they can't quite get hold of this person. So then this person is actually just replicating what they have experienced in childhood, that longing and hoping and wishful thinking that someday this person will truly love them. And this is, of course, a self-esteem issue, that the person on a subconscious level feels that if they can just pin this person down, if they can convince them to give it a go, that they will feel true love. And if they feel true love from this person who's very hard to get, that they will feel worthy. So always deep-rooted self-esteem, self-worth issues in limerence, even when someone is particularly confident. Confidence is irrelevant in limerence because actually this is to do with trauma and childhood wounds, and very confident people can have trauma and childhood wounds. Sign number 6 that's limerence is that it is disruptive to your life. So love actually enriches your life, makes you feel worthy. Most of the time it's actually a really good relationship, it's supportive. Limerence causes huge problems in your life. It distracts you from the present moment. It doesn't make you happy. You are preoccupied with this person. You're almost like always trying to figure it out. So actually it's disruptive to your well-being. Sign number 7 is to do with reciprocation dependency. So in limerence, the smallest little action from the other person can sway your mood. So your mood is very dependent on small signs from the other person. What that person does, what they say can completely change your mood. Whereas actually with true love, you're not so preoccupied by the mood of your partner. You know that your partner has ups and downs, has good days and bad days, and that they consistently love you. So you don't need to feel really insecure if there's a small argument or whatever interactions you're having with them. You don't have to overanalyze it or read too much into it because you know your partner is stable, your partner is there for you. You don't need to play detective, and you don't need to worry about the micro actions of this person. Sign number 8 is fantasy. So with limerence, you spend a lot of time fantasizing in your mind about this relationship, what it could be in the future, playing out scenarios in your head about this person reciprocating and how great it will be, and you will even feel good when you're playing out those scenarios in a positive way. With true love, you don't need to play out so many fantasies because actually what you're focused on is enjoying the present moment with the person that you're in a relationship with, or who you're getting to know, where it could end up being a healthy relationship. You don't have time to fantasize, and you don't need to fantasize because you feel so secure that actually it's just fine to let things play out and see how it goes. The fantasy is actually part of feeling very insecure and then self-soothing, so that you're fantasizing to bring yourself away from that anxious and insecure feeling. You're creating this fantasy to feel better about a very uncertain situation. The fantasy can also be about taking yourself away from other emotions that you might be feeling in your life, such as depression, shame, anything that might not be related to you and this other person. You can use fantasy as escapism. So if you're finding yourself fantasizing about this person the object of your affection, you can be sure that this is limerence and not love. With true love, you actually get to communicate about the future and you start to build a future together. So there is communication about that and you feel fairly secure most of the time that actually this is reciprocated, this is mutual, it's going somewhere, so you don't need to fantasize. Sign number 9 is fear of rejection. There's always an underlying fear of rejection with limerence, even though it might be on a subconscious level. And for some people, that fear of rejection will mean that they will never directly ask the person, will we give it a go? Are you actually really interested in me? A lot of people will avoid that for fear of rejection. So they will instead kind of chase and give subtle hints that they're interested in the person, or they'll make lots of attempts to spend time with the person without ever actually confronting the situation and asking, are we going to make this work? And I'm not suggesting people should confront someone and say, are we going to make this work? Because actually it's much better for people to just pick up on the signs that someone is not interested if they're not making effort to spend time with you. Then you should really accept that this is not going to lead to a healthy relationship and this is limerence, and then you move on. And the reason I say it's better to not directly ask the person if they're interested in you or not is that actually in most cases of limerence, the person is not directly interested in you. You will almost always know if someone is interested in you because they give you signs or they tell you that they are interested in you. There are, of course, some exceptions to that, but if someone, feels they have a chance, usually they will show signs that they are interested in you and you'll pick up on those signs. So in most cases where someone actually feels like they have to directly ask someone, are you interested in giving this a go or not, they are going to be rejected. Now, if someone is really struggling with limerence and they're so preoccupied that it's completely ruining their life, they cannot be in the present moment and they are struggling and it is causing them torture, then it's better actually to just be direct and say, are you interested or are you not? I just really need to know. You're either going to get ghosted in that situation or you're going to get an answer. And when people get that answer, it puts them out of their misery because actually limerence cannot continue to be fueled when there is no hope. So when the person says, absolutely not, I'm sorry, you're great, or I'm actually very attracted to you, but I don't want to have a committed relationship with you, then in every case of limerence that I've ever encountered with every client that I've worked with, their limerence has always ceased to exist. The fire has burnt out because limerence is not stalking behavior. Limerence is about wishful thinking. So although there's delusion in limerence, the most reasonable of individuals who are able to live successful, healthy lives in relation to their friendships, their working lives, everything else, the most stable of individuals are able to get themselves into very delusional thinking when it comes to limerence if they have had trauma in their childhood in relation to complex trauma that's led to complex PTSD, childhood emotional neglect, these kind of situations where the person is actually functioning very well as an individual otherwise in relation to the other aspects of their life, they will often then end up delusional when it comes to their romantic lives. And this is where people will sometimes lose respect for people who are otherwise very healthy, cool, nice, fun individuals. They will start obsessing over people, and then their friends become aware that they're starting to go into this mode of fantasy and obsessing again. Their friends kind of roll their eyes and are like, oh no, not this again, because other people who are close to the individual will often pick up on the fact that you're fantasizing. So that's actually another way of knowing that something is amiss here. Something is limerent rather than love, is if your friends are not quite buying your new romance, or they're sick of hearing about this person. That's when they're giving you sign, they're mirroring to you that actually this is limerence and not love. Another sign of limerence is preoccupation. When you're in a limerent mode, you completely lose touch with presence and you live in this fantasy. So you are not there, you're not living your life, you're not paying attention to nature or enjoying being in the present moment or fully present in conversations with people or fully present in your work. You are all in your head, completely fantasizing because you're so preoccupied with this individual rather than spending time actually focusing on the present moment with this person and seeing how things go with them. Sign number 11 is physical symptoms. So let's just say you bump into the object of your obsession and you weren't expecting to. Do you get complete flutters of anxiety, almost panic-like symptoms, heart racing? And the reason this happens with limerence and not love is you don't feel secure with this person. So you might even be in a relationship with them. It might be the early stages of a relationship and you bump into them unexpectedly. You have built this person up in your mind so much that you don't even see them as human, and you certainly don't feel secure with them. So having strong feelings when you bump into them, maybe it's a planned occasion and maybe you're having those symptoms too, but particularly if you bump into them unexpected, you are probably gonna have like panic-like symptoms because you're not expecting, and you're worried about what they think of you, and you're overly preoccupied about what they think of you. So it leads to a lot of self-consciousness, an excessive amount of focus on yourself and worry about what they think about you. And of course, in true love, you don't worry what your partner thinks about you. You feel secure. You know they love you, and you don't have to have these heart palpitations or physical symptoms. This can even happen for people actually when they're just thinking about the object of their obsession. They can start to have these heart palpitations or feelings of anxiety too. Sign number 12 is that you might experience feelings of possessiveness or jealousy when it comes to the person that you feel limerence over. So even though there's no relationship there, you will feel jealous of other people getting that person, or feel particularly possessive over them because you've kind of built it up in your mind as an attachment that doesn't really exist. So therefore you feel quite possessive over them. And the reason you feel quite jealous is actually it just doesn't feel secure. So therefore it's almost like you feel like you're going to lose something, even though it's something that you don't have. You feel like you have made it into something, so you feel like it is real. So they kind of are your partner, or you kind of have something significant with them because you have significant feelings for them, and the feelings are real. But the insecurity of the situation and how unsettling that is for you makes you feel quite possessive. You don't want anyone else to have them. Whereas your secure, loving partner, yes, occasionally you might feel a bit jealous, but overall, they have chosen to be with you. They've made that very clear, and therefore you don't need to feel as possessive or as jealous. And finally, sign number 13 that this is limerence and not love is that it limits your personal growth. And the reason it limits your personal growth is you have selected someone that you don't properly know, haven't spent enough time with, haven't developed a significant connection with, and you have built it all up in your mind, and you're willing to throw it all on red or black for this person. You're willing to throw it all away. All your life goals, all of the things you really truly want in a relationship, you are willing to put to one side because you feel you have such significant feelings for this person. That's a huge gamble, and it's a sign of addiction, because you wouldn't do that with a true relationship. You wouldn't do that for true love. You would actually be more discerning. And that's an important word here, discernment. Discernment goes out the window when it comes to limerence. You always think with limerence, you're like, well, just for this one person, because they're so special, I can forget about the fact that this is a huge thing on my criteria. I will forget about this being a deal breaker. I'll forget about the fact that I don't normally date people with addictions. I'll forget about the fact that they actually might cheat occasionally. I'll forget about the fact that they triangulate things a bit. I'll forget about the fact that they smoke, even though I would normally never date a smoker. I will forget about the fact that they actually are not very secure in their occupation, even though that would normally be very important to me. I will forget about the fact that they don't really look after themselves very well. I'll forget about the fact that they're kind of unreliable. I will forget about the fact that I am not really sure if we have the same things in common or enough in common. I'll forget about the fact that I might feel very lonely at times. I'll forget about the fact that I am not sure if I can rely on them. I'll forget about the fact that I don't know if they're going to be a good parent to our future children, if you do want to have children. I'll forget about the fact that I know they are regularly going to cause me emotional pain because already they haven't shown up for me emotionally. So you get the picture. There is a lot of I will forget about. There is a lot of exceptions for this person. There's a lot of exceptions for this love, because actually, guess what? It's not love, it's limerence. So those are the signs that what you are experiencing is limerence and not love. I know it can be really hard to accept, and I know sometimes this can come with a lot of shame to actually realize that the world that you're living in is fantasy and not reality, and that actually you're really struggling in relation to your relationship life and you don't quite know how to get out. But the first sign of overcoming limerence, i.e. love addiction, is to acknowledge that this is limerence and you have a tendency towards limerence and love addiction. And that means that you are also getting closer to the stage, or actually at the stage, that you have decided that you're gonna get out of it and that you're gonna do everything possible to get out of this so that you can experience a much happier, loving, more fulfilling relationship life, and you're not just stuck in this painful cycle of going for partners that do not reciprocate the feelings that you have for them. In future videos, I'm going to talk about how to get out of limerence. I hope you've liked this video. If you want to see more of my content, please subscribe to my channel.